Hey YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the most amazing topic and the thing developers love to talk about the most, CSS. There's a whole lot of information that you can get from CSS, and one of the topics we're going to start with today is actually CSS Positions, which is key to understanding how things interact and how to acquire the right look and feel for the different web page that you're trying to design. Let's jump into it and get started, and I'll show you all about CSS Positions. All right, so we have a couple of files here, and the link to the GitHub repo is going to be below in the description. So if you want to check out this example yourself and play around with it, please do so. The link will be in the description, and it's just on GitHub. Check it out, play around with it. So we have a few different CSS classes. We have a style CSS, and we have an index HTML. Basically, let me make this bigger. To get our style sheet, we put it in the head tag. So this is your normal HTML page where you have a head, body, and then the style sheet that we're bringing in is this file here on the left where we have a few different CSS classes. I'll move this to the left a little bit. There we go. Actually, we need to make this, there we go. I have on the right hand side the actual file, the HTML file. So if you're using VS Code, you can click in here and do copy path. And if you open that in your web browser, so I'm using Chrome here, then you can see the CSS and interact with it. So I'll close that. Right here we have, like I mentioned, our head tag and then a body. And we're just going to play with divs, which are a block element. And this first one is our base. So static elements, or like I should say, static is the base CSS position. So if I did position static here, like this is the same thing. So we don't need to define it. This is the default. So something about static elements. So we'll bring this element into play, and you can see on the right how it interacts. So static elements are not affected by top, bottom, left, and right positions. You can see we have top and left here. If we increase this to like 100 pixels and 100 pixels, it'll have zero effect on it. And so we can refresh the page, nothing happens. And we're, still have this normal flow where the first element, which is our div here of base, gets rendered, and then static gets rendered afterwards. If we inverted this and had it be this way, then you see it gets inverted here as well. So this is normal HTML rendering. Static is the default, and we can roll this back to put it back in the same spot. Same thing. So let's move on to the next one, which is relative. So if we comment out static and we bring in relative, then this one should look a little bit different, and it's got a background color of blue. So you can see that it actually is adjusted based on this top and left. So if we bumped this to 100 pixels again and 100 pixels, then this should move quite significantly based on the relative position from base. So let's go there, and you can see it moves in. If we took this out, then it would move back, and so that is the top, left, bottom, and right all impact where this gets rendered. So hopefully that explains why relative, if you want to position something relative to where it should be, then this is the CSS position you would use, and other content is not going to be adjusted to fit this gap. So if we had another one of these base elements, then it's going to render right here next to it. So if we took this off, then it's going to slot right in the middle. But if we bring it back, again, it's relative to where it's supposed to be in the page. Let's move on to the next one. So we have static, relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. So this is going to be fixed. If we bring over this fixed position, so again, I'm defining all these positions here. So fixed is going to be relative to the viewport, which means it always stays in the same place even if the page is scrolled. And I'll show you that here in a second. It also does not leave a gap where it would normally have been located. So let's refresh this. You see fixed actually gets plopped right on top of where we're at here. So if we bump this to 100 and 100, it should move, and there we go. Now, like I mentioned, scrolling also plays into this. So if we had, a bunch of these base, and let's put some more down here. No, I don't want to translate. That was weird. So we can see, so refreshed, we have a whole lot of these base elements, and watch what happens whenever I scroll. So look, it does not move the fixed element, and it stays in the same spot because it's fixed. So if you need something to stay in a spot on the page, use CSS position fixed, and that will be how you accomplish it. So it's relative to where it's supposed to be, but it stays to where if you scroll, it'll stay in a fixed spot on the page. All right, so let's move to absolute. So absolute position, I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with this one. Basically, all we're doing here is switching the CSS position and then maybe adjusting like top and left. So let's do this. No, I don't want to translate. I don't know why that keeps coming up. You could see absolute. So if we bumped this again, we could do 100 and 100. We could refresh and it gets put here. So if we scroll, now it doesn't scroll with us. So it's different from the fixed position in that whenever we scroll, it goes away because this is absolutely positioned on the page and it's going to be positioned relative to its nearest positioned ancestor. So if you had some nesting going on here, then it's going to be positioned relative to that. So like if we had a nested div here that was, a certain width and height, then that would have an impact on how this absolute element gets rendered. Keep that in mind, and then I'll show you here. So if you wanted to have something off the page, so like this one where we have a right and top, so right is actually -10 pixels. So this is going to always be off the page. So if I made this, a large page, it's still, going to be off the page no matter how big I make this window. Positioning absolute helps you to achieve, some of that more customized CSS where you have maybe overlapping elements. So keep that in mind whenever you're needing to do that. All right, moving on to the last one, which is sticky. And so we'll comment out this absolute, bring in sticky. This one, so this is rendered in the middle of all of these base divs. This is going to be positioned basically wherever the user is scrolling, and then it's going to stick at the top. So watch this. So if I scroll. Oh, hang on. We need to make this a little bit shorter so that we can see this a little better. So watch. So sticky, and it's going to stick at the top of my page. See how it does that? So it pops out and comes along for the ride whenever we're scrolling past it. So if we did, 100 and 100, then it would be positioned, relative again. Whenever we scroll it, you can see it kind of pops out. So there you go. If you need like some sticky headers or something to follow, maybe a modal or some other dialog box for a user, this is probably the element you would use, doing position sticky. If you learned something in this video or you want to see more CSS videos, definitely like and subscribe and comment in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.